Asmongold presents himself as the voice of reason, but in reality, he's been so radicalized by the media he consumes that despite hiding behind this pragmatic approach,
it's obvious. It's the most common sense thing that anybody could say.
His conclusions reek of the internal biases he holds, often shamelessly looking past obvious details to craft an analysis that supports the narrative he's already subscribed to. I didn't really know all that much about Asmongold before this video, just that he was incredibly popular, extremely polarizing, and that he lived in grotesque filth.
And last night I ended what happened to be the longest streak that I've ever had of not taking a shower, about a month and a half.
Those who dislike and politically oppose Asmongold just throw him into a far-right box. Meanwhile, his audience says he's just misrepresented in bad faith. So I dove into hundreds of hours of Asmongold content to find the actual truth, with the goal of understanding what his beliefs truly are and how he formulates and justifies those beliefs, to determine the efficacy of his common sense approach. What I found was anything but common sense. And I'll show you exactly why I've come to that conclusion. But to begin, what even is this guy's political agenda? Asmongold's politics are complicated. To put it simply, in some views he's quite progressive. He's pro-choice,
voting rights, abortion. I think this should be universal.
Acknowledges gender dysphoria.
I have a tremendous amount of empathy for trans people.
Supports the idea of UBI.
Is this the precursor to UBI? It's inevitable. Anybody that can't see that is delusional.
Supports public health care.
I think that the entire healthcare and health insurance system is a complete fraud.
And believes in a secular society.
I have no problem with you having your own beliefs. The problem is when people like Ted Cruz make them policies.
At the same time, he's very anti-woke, often complaining about LGBT and DEI themes present in video games.
Like, a fat guy can be funny. A fat chick? The only time that a fat chick makes sense is if she's the villain.
But that alone doesn't make you far right. We've all watched an SJW own compilation. There are three main reasons why the nuance of Asmongold's political opinions aren't really considered outside his direct sphere.
I think he sits down on stream before streaming, he's like, what is like the most retarded shit I can say?
He stated that he doesn't care about the eradication of Palestinians due to his belief that they are an inferior culture.
These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture.
He has strong anti-immigration and pro-ICE views, and he's failed to disavow Nick Fuentes. Asmongold himself often pushes an edgy style of content, making arguably distasteful jokes about recent political events and using severely polarizing language. Saying some crazy shit is kind of part of his brand.
I think we charge him with treason, we capital punishment. Let him know. All the way. Old Testament.
But when you're not on his side, instead of jokes, it feels kind of like hatred. When it comes to Fuentes, who's made a significant resurgence, Asmongold purposefully obfuscates his views. He won't disavow him, he won't endorse him, but he'll giggle at his offensive jokes.
Jews are running society, women need to shut the fuck up, blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part, and we would live in paradise. It's that simple.
Man.
And claim that their collaboration is inevitable.
Yeah, Asmongold has been... We gotta do a stream. Does he want me to reach out to him?
I think that we might have to wait till next year for that one. I don't know if Twitch is ready for that one yet. Now, I will say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But I don't know if when is sooner than later.
It's hard to toe the line here when Fuentes is so closely associated with the far right. Despite all of this, he's a strong supporter for the release of the Epstein files, a point which he's remained consistently solid on since the public was first made aware of their existence, and he wants those guilty to face the music even if they might have been on his side.
Well, obviously impeachment is on the table
Yes,
for Ken Bondi.
yes.
We will use all our powers.
That's
whether
right.
It's inherent contempt.
Old Testament.
Whether it is impeachment.
Yes,
whether
everything.
It's referral for prosecution.
See, this is what I've wanted.
The reality
exactly.
is...
Should do this with
that
everything.
I commend Asmongold's ability to hold views that don't necessarily fit into a cut and dry political box. Even on easy topics where it's easier to agree with his audience, he'll push back. Furthermore, he's demonstrated an ability to be self-aware and grow, most notably when he was banned for his comments on Palestinians. This is what makes Asmongold so valuable. He can acknowledge nuance, he can admit his mistakes, and he can grow grow, a rarity among political influencers. Some may say he does this for some manipulative reason, for some gain. I'm gonna say that no, this is probably actually representative of how he views society would be best. Ultimately, the analysis this video provides won't be about the merit of his political position. You can find multi-hour Destiny or Hassan compilations where they tell you exactly why they disagree with him. The focus of this analysis is on his methodology. Is his process of arriving at his political opinions rigorous and informed? Even if you get to the right answer, if your entire process is poor, it'll make the result worthless, weakening the power of your message. That's not to say that a pragmatic position is entirely worthless. In fact, it's the form of political thought that most of us engage in. The vast majority of people don't have the time or dedication to comb through all the fine details and statistics to come to an airtight opinion. Instead, people generally absorb information through content and judge the veracity of it based off their common sense. The most obvious failing of this sort of analysis is that it doesn't fucking work if you don't have common sense.
Am I crazy? Am I crazy for saying, like, that doesn't look like a gun to me? Like, if I zoom in, how the fuck can anybody tell that's a gun for sure? How are people going off of this and being certain? How can you be certain off of this? Okay, keep watching. Okay, let's keep watching. He does have the gun for sure.
Asmongold employs a common sense approach, but oftentimes he looks past obvious details to craft an analysis that supports the narrative he's already subscribed to. We can hone in on a few examples. Let's start with his reaction to Channel 5's video directly addressing claims from Nick Shirley, the Andrew Callahan, and Channel 5 itself, specifically edited a podcast with Nick in a way to make him look bad.
So the other week, I sat down with Andrew Callahan in Channel 5 to do a sit-down podcast-style interview for his channel. And when he goes and posts the video, I see he just posted an hour-long interview. I said, well, that's weird, because we actually spoke for around 2.5 hours. And then I go and watch the interview, I'm saying, well, what is this? This is not what happened.
For those who don't know, Nick Shirley is a YouTuber who made a multi-part series about his investigation into fraud in Minnesota. Those who are anti-immigration really like Nick Shirley because Nick Shirley's thesis is that the fraud is being committed largely by Somali immigrants. People debate the veracity of Nick's investigation, and Asmongold, being anti-immigration and pro-ICE, is of course a fan of Nick.
I totally support this.
So he's already predisposed to take his side. So let's see how he repeatedly misinterprets Andrew's response just to support Nick Shirley. In the first part of the analysis, as Andrew explains the reasoning behind cutting what he considered irrelevant content such as dead air or boring conversation, Asmongold repeatedly comments on how Andrew is simply explaining the process of video editing, not addressing what's in contention.
I hope Andrew actually addresses the specific criticisms that Nick has. Because right now, like, we're just basically, Andrew is talking about the process of video editing, which is clearly not what's being discussed here.
This is a poor analysis. Andrew is directly addressing part of the accusation. Nick's post links two things: an hour of runtime being shortened.
See, he just posted an hour-long interview. I said, well, that's weird, because we actually spoke for around 2.5 hours.
And Nick being misrepresented.
That's just two examples from the interview with Andrew Callahan where he literally went out of his way to try and make me look bad.
Obviously implying that this hour that has been cut is full of important details. Andrew is saying, hey, everyone, the majority of what was edited out was Nick Shirley stumbling over his words, awkward pauses, and irrelevant content.
We're dealing with a long-form interview of somebody who talks very slowly and circles back to repetitive talking points. One of the first things that we do in post-production is cutting what's called dead air. So in this raw interview with Nick, which had a total runtime of 2 hours and 2 minutes, we had to cut nearly half an hour of dead air to make it listenable.
Basically, Andrew is talking about the process of video editing, which is clearly not what's being discussed here.
He's directly addressing the implication before he addresses the specific points. An important thing to do so no one can say, well, you only addressed a few points. What about the rest of the hour you cut? Then Asmongold completely fails to understand the point of this section and thinks that Andrew's just insulting Nick's intelligence.
So bear with me here. I'm going to show you the raw footage, and we'll see how with the magic of editing, we were able to make Nick sound actually smarter and faster than he was in person. Check this out. How does that
I don't think anybody's really denying the fact that Nick Shirley isn't a very, very good verbal communicator. And it seems like what Andrew's doing right here is he's attacking Nick Shirley's verbal communication skills rather than what Nick Shirley's accusation was, is the way that it was cut and the information that was left out.
That's not what Andrew's doing at all. He's demonstrating two things. He's justifying that a significant portion of the interview had to be cut to make it watchable, and he's showing that he clearly edited in good faith, because if it was in bad faith to make Nick Shirley look bad, he would have left in all of this shit.
In Minnesota, so my video on the front, so my video HH within and then they're asking for.
Asmongold uses the discussion of Nick Shirley's intelligence to segue into a point about confidence and debate.
You will always win an argument if you sound right versus if you sound wrong. It's more important to sound right than to be right. I know it's stupid and it shouldn't be true, but it is true.
This is a horrible, antiquated take, and not really true in the modern world. I'll admit at one point, confidence was a direct measure of correctness, where you would watch Ben Shapiro own an SJW with facts and logic. And because he talked fast, everybody thought he was correct on that basis alone. Just to make it even, the same goes for Destiny.
Talk fast, so people think that you're coherent.
Not to say that neither Destiny or Ben Shapiro has ever made a correct claim, but they are most definitely judged on more than just sounding confident. If you find yourself persuaded by arguments just because they sound right, then you yourself probably just lack the capability to form valuable critical thought. As it applies to Nick Shirley, if you think the only valid criticism and the reason why people think he's unintelligent is only because of the way he speaks, you seem to have missed the forest for the trees.
I love watching videos like this and getting to pass judgment on people and telling everybody who's right and who's wrong and acting like I'm the person that knows everything.
True! That's what I'm doing in this video, actually. Then Asmongold gets jump scared by a graph, which prompts him to divulge some of his thoughts about graphs and statistics.
Now this is my time to shine, to complain about using graphs. Okay, so number one, if you look at, for example, the new bill that's being introduced in Virginia, so they're making this new rule to where they seal people's criminal records on like a 6-month basis. So a lot of the cases where crime is going down a lot, one of the reasons why crime goes down a lot, some of the cases is because the crime is now reframed as not a crime. And so whenever I see a graph like this or anything else, I don't believe this at all. This looks like bullshit to me.
Sure. You know what, Zach? Let me grant you that data and statistics can be presented in misleading ways, but to simply say that graphs look bullshit to you because of it is an indefensible leap in logic. All this means is that it's important to think about the graphs and statistics people present you, but that should apply to all political analysis. Just as easy as it is to lie with a graph, it's easier to lie without one.
I do not have a shock collar for Kaya.
What a fucking liar, dude.
Furthermore, how does the idea of redefining the statistic apply to a graph about fucking occupancy rates? Do they redefine occupancy of multifamily units to include sleeping in my car outside of Walmart? It feels like your implication is that since he used a graph, he's wrong.
As I mentioned 6 or 7 times in this interview, Nick references the stat that 89% of fraud in Minnesota is committed by Somalis. He is kind of right. However, the
Yes, he is.
No, he's not. And the video you're watching explains the difference. Nick says 89% of the fraud in Minnesota is done by Somalis.
89% of the fraud is being committed by Somalians, and 89% of the fraud being committed inside Minnesota is by the Somalian population. 89% of the fraud happening by people who were brought into our country and then committing fraud. So 89% of the fraud happening in Minnesota is from the Somalian population.
Nick's statement would mean that out of all of the fraud committed in Minnesota, tax fraud, insurance fraud, corporate fraud, etc., 89% of it is perpetrated by Somalis. That's not what the statistic is. The actual statistic is that 89% of the defendants of a specific high-profile fraud investigation were Somali. It's not reflective of the proportion that Somalis make up of the total demographic that commits fraud. It's like saying that 100% of cryptocurrency fraud is committed by white people, with your evidence being Sam Bankman-Fried and Caroline Ellison. Regardless of whether you think Nick Shirley's investigation is conclusive, it is a literal fact that he's misrepresenting the statistic.
And facts don't care about your feelings.
All of this to say that Asmongold's analysis is clearly engineered to favor Nick Shirley because he supports what Nick is saying and what he represents. It's not a good faith or common sense analysis. It throws aside common sense to serve a purpose. Asmongold's analyses are often weak and riddled with bias. This isn't unique or despicable, mind you. Many of us look for information and narratives that support our worldview, subconsciously usually, rather than seeking an objective truth. I think molding yourself to come at issues from an unbiased perspective and to consider all facts and information before arriving at any conclusion is very tough. First of all, it's not impossible to accurately recognize your own bias, because your bias from your perspective feels like objectivity. Asmongold is so unashamed in his bias that it feels like he genuinely thinks he's the CEO of truth. But ironically, that can't be farther from the truth. I think the worst example I could find of a double standard was in how Asmongold treated the events of January 6th in comparison to what was going on in Minnesota just recently. He thinks both are bad, but affords so much more empathy and understanding to January 6th, when beyond political position, they can be reduced to the same core. A group of people become righteously indignant due to how they perceive the actions of their government. They protest in an aggressive way, with some of them clearly breaking laws.
So whenever you look at these people and you see how, you think to yourself how terrible these people are, yes, they are doing bad things. That's true. But many of the times, the reason why they do these bad things is because they think that they're doing a good thing. They think that they're in the right. And a lot of these people are not these secret, scheming, maniacal terrorists or whatever.
I don't even really view them as people. I don't. I view them as like animals.
And I think that there needs to be some responsibility for the people that do these things. Because if you don't give them any responsibility, it's just going to keep getting worse.
The only thing you have to do is crush them. You crush them completely.
Why respect a system that doesn't respect you? And that's what they think. And at the end of the day, I can't fault somebody about that.
I actually gain more satisfaction out of the suffering from Americans than non-Americans. Because I feel like the non-Americans are just acting in their best interest, but the Americans are the ones that I think are traitors.
You don't just shoot people randomly. Are you kidding me? Who determines who a terrorist is? The person with the gun? What happens when they're wrong?
After you run one of them over, right? Or you shoot one of them for trying to run you over, then you victory lap around it and you send in more people and you do it even more.
Either Asmongold should maintain his authoritative stance, request harsh and absolute punishment for everybody, or he should be empathetic to everyone. Don't switch your opinion based on how closely the group's political opinions align with yours. But it's really tough for Asmongold to shrug off his bias, because the media he consumes directly reinforces his worldview. Asmongold informs himself through 3 mediums: his chat, his subreddit, and his X feed, and one can already begin to see the problem forming. There is no sugarcoating it. Asmongold's chat is right-wing, but not regular right-wing. We're talking Fuentes right-wing. I'm talking some of these takes are genuinely unhinged right-wing.
Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part.
Your chat is going to inform you of this perspective. Your chat is going to affirm this perspective. Your chat is going to agree with anything you say that is right-wing. The Asmongold subreddit, on the other hand, can have some nuance sometimes, with the occasional discussion thread offering a plethora of opinions and civil discussion. But the majority of time, it's also right-wing. How about X? Well, yeah, your feed is directly dictated by the content you largely consume. He consumes right-wing content. So it's all right-wing content. Once again, I have to clarify that it does not matter whether you are right-wing or left-wing. Consuming media that supports you and is served to you algorithmically is not a great way to do anything except radicalize yourself, especially when it feels like most of this shit is engineered in bad faith to pit us against each other. A person on your subreddit posting they hate you and want you dead. Generic name, hidden posts, hidden comments, 124,000 upvotes, 670 contributions, and a 3-month Reddit age. And this guy successfully spawns a vitriolic comment section? Overall, it's pretty obvious that these aren't areas that are a great source of information, and I'm not the first to bring it up to him. This is the best clip I could find about him directly addressing why he doesn't care about his source of information.
You openly admitted you never do research or read articles outside of Twitter. How can you shamelessly tell others to read more? I don't need to understand whatever article you want me to read. All I need to understand is human psychology and incentives. And incentives and human psychology are the deciding factors of how people will behave. I don't need to read your little special book or your Wikipedia article or anything else besides that. None of that stuff matters. What matters fundamentally is how do people act, how do people think, and how do people respond to incentives. If you can understand that, then nothing else matters. It's pretty simple.
It's an incredibly vague and sort of nothing burger statement, but let me argue against it to the best of my ability. First of all, human psychology cannot be viewed accurately in such a reductionist way. You cannot just understand all human psychology because it's not a predictable linear equation. Psychoanalysis just doesn't really work, especially because you can warp it to fit whatever narrative you want. Taking his own condition as an example, Asmongold lives in filth because he likes it and he likes the smell. Asmongold lives in filth because he's horribly depressed. Asmongold lives in filth because he's used to it. Asmongold lives in filth because he's irrationally rational, to the point where he considers it a substantial waste of money and time to upkeep hygiene when he can use those things on more efficient and worthwhile pursuits. The truth could be any combination of these, or even none of them at all. Secondly, incentives are also not as simple as he wants to portray them. Almost every decision comes with pros and cons, and people will make choices based on their internal logic, which isn't always outwardly rational. I would argue that Asmongold is incentivized to clean his home for a variety of reasons, but even with all these incentives, he doesn't do it. Having an incentive means nothing. Asmongold's reasoning falls apart quickly, so rather than him simply not needing more information, I think he just doesn't want the information. He doesn't want to have his worldview challenged. Today, Asmongold completely refuses to debate or even discuss his ideas in a forum actually conducive for conversation.
I have no interest and no desire to debate anybody. I am profoundly uncomfortable being confrontational with people, and I do not care at all about debating. I will never debate anybody for any reason.
The closest thing he does is reacting to other streamers' clips, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out why this isn't an effective method.
Tired of it. Most people are tired of it. Right. And I'm also tired of pretending that I'm not tired of it. He has to sit here and listen to me agreeing with myself, telling myself that I'm right. Oh my God.
He excuses himself from debate by saying there's nothing for him to gain from being dominated by debate lords.
Why would I debate Destiny? If I already know what's happening, why do we want to have a conversation about it? What is this here? Why would I ever debate anybody for any reason? I know I'm right. It's obvious that I'm right. Why would I give Destiny a platform to lie? Doesn't make sense.
There's plenty of things for Asmongold to gain. There are a lot of people who would want to see it. I'm sure a substantial portion of his audience would love to see him go head to head with Destiny. The stream would do incredible numbers, and the resulting highlights will get millions upon millions of views across all platforms. Cha-ching. That's the sound of money. It also furthers Asmongold's reach. Might even bring over some Hassan fans when Asmongold destroys Destiny. But that's honestly all besides the point. Zach, my friend, consider that just a bonus. The real reason it's important is for personal growth. I personally feel that debate and discussion is very important, specifically with people who harbor opinions that oppose your own. Provided both parties go into it with an open mind and commitment to not get personal, I've found it to be unequivocally a positive thing. Very rarely does this result in one party being completely disproven and convinced of the other's position. Instead, usually when it's all said and done, we both walk away with a nuanced understanding of the topic, tempered beliefs, a reasonable view of the opposition, and a more complete worldview. Ironically, I think Asmongold understands the importance of debate, considering he literally had one with Hassan when he said inflammatory statements about Palestine. And you know what? I don't think that Asmongold got destroyed so badly he never debated again. After watching the debate, I actually went from thinking, wow, Asmongold, that's some crazy shit to say, to I understand what he's trying to say, and although I don't really agree, I understand he's not the malicious racist people wanted to paint him as. Even more ironically, Asmongold used to be a regular guest on the Scuff podcast where he himself would moderate and participate in healthy debate.
Another thing that's really important is being willing to come to the table and talk to people who you might completely revile, completely disagree with, and still be willing to have a conversation and be relatively civil. That's really important. And I think that's what is going to lead to any sort of like positive change one way or another.
I don't think Zach needs an explanation of the value of debate.
I can see your point of view. I hope that you can see my point of view to an extent. You don't have to agree with me. I find this stuff interesting. I enjoy conversations like this, so I have no problem discussing it and talking about it and debating about it all day. It's no problem.
Okay.
Really, there's two reasons I can gather that result in him acquiring such a negative predisposition. Either he intrinsically fears his ideas being challenged, knowing it will be detrimental to his being, or he has such a negative view of the opposition, he can't reason to believe that they'll engage him in good faith. So instead, he sits atop his ivory tower, free from the threat of debate. No one to challenge his ideas, no one to call out his hypocrisy. Hypocrisy? Hypocrisy is bad. Patton Oswalt even said it was the worst part of the whole Bill Cosby situation. Nobody likes a hypocrite, and Asmongold can be the worst of them, often applying standards to others that he himself doesn't hold, with the most egregious one being his standards of humor. I'll let everyone form their own personal stance on edgy jokes and the line, but the least you can ask of someone is that they should be able to take what they dish out. Asmongold will make his own crass joke, but then he'll be personally offended when someone else makes fun of him.
He could come across J.D. Vance fucking his mom's corpse, and J.D. Vance could say, well, it's a Made in America fleshlight, and Asmongold would defend it. That's how completely debased these subhuman fucking losers are.
It's okay to be personally hurt by destiny. I would say it's pretty crass and harsh of him to say this, especially when he knows Asmongold somewhat personally, but framing it as a moral issue when Asmongold himself often makes some extremely edgy jokes is hypocritical. Stay consistent in your morals. Don't crumple when it's convenient to you. You mock Renee Good's death, hope the protesters get killed, laugh at a wild Nick Fuentes joke, you even make jokes about a random trans kid dying.
I was going to make a really bad joke, but you know what? I'm not going to. Do you want to know what their vision was? Hey, what can I say? Anyway, and I explained a joke. Somebody posted an image of that bridge before they jumped off and killed themselves. Just like the dev team is going to kill their studio. You like that? Was that cute?
But then High Road Destiny, when I genuinely feel like his comments should fit into your view of what's appropriate or not.
He could come across J.D. Vance fucking his mom's corpse.
You like that? Was that cute?
The obvious reason for Asmongold's hypocrisy is that Destiny is on the other side, and Destiny is personally attacking him. He's also all about fuck aliens. Get him out. Get him out.
Probability that Tom Homan would let me go with him dressed up as Ash Ketchum with watching them do deportations.
But he crumbles in real time when he himself is compelled to take physical action to further his political goals.
I live around plenty of illegals. Trust me. How do you know they're illegal? Rat them out? Oh. I don't know. It's not really a big deal. It's not my problem. If they're illegal, why don't you report them if you support ICE? Because the real reason why is that I think they're illegal, but I don't, I'm not sure. And I would feel like it would be wrong to just go and report people to ICE when I don't really know that. I don't feel like it would be the right thing to do to go and report somebody just on a hunch.
Why not? Don't you support ICE and their entire job is to investigate, identify, and deport illegal immigrants? Why would it be wrong to report people you suspect of committing a crime to the exact department whose primary job it is to investigate that crime? You, my friend, might just be aiding and abetting. Unless the implication is that he doesn't trust them to do the job, but that would be against everything he stands for. Ultimately, the methodology that Asmongold employs is moronic. It does not seek to learn, it does not seek to educate, it seeks to reaffirm what he already thinks and feels, even when the two of them don't necessarily mesh. But maybe it's by design, because the viewers don't come to Asmongold for a lecture, they come for catharsis, for someone to express the same frustration, anger, and outrage they have when they scroll through social media. Maybe that's why none of his audience really deeply cares. They all feel so strongly compelled by the same feelings, they can't help but think it signifies an obvious and absolute truth. Maybe the more important question is, what motivates Asmongold? I've been battling between two different interpretations of Asmongold. The first is cynical and hopeless. This Asmongold does not care about accuracy. All he cares about is money and notoriety. He's now the most popular political streamer on Twitch, and his influence extends significantly beyond the confines of his platform. Asmongold's just one small step away from dinner with Trump. This Asmongold is not an idiot. He's just evil and greedy. And that's the first interpretation. The second is a more charitable interpretation, and ultimately the one I've settled on. Asmongold has the capability to be rational, but has become so radicalized by his own stream and social media that he has lost the ability to see the nuanced perspective. He is so convinced that the lines have been drawn that he has no sympathy for the other side. In fact, he doesn't think that they approach him in good faith at all. So instead, whenever someone criticizes him or points out his flaws, he'll just throw them in the left-wing box and write him off as just a hater. I don't feel like this is intentional or by design. I 100% believe that Asmongold truly feels whatever he says on stream. I don't think there's any manipulation here. I don't think Asmongold is beyond hope, nor do I think him being saved would be abandoning his perspective entirely. He just needs to step back, analyze his biases, and make a conscious effort to seek the truth rather than charge forward with a preconceived perspective. And I know he can do it. After all, he's done it before. Maybe he doesn't even know he slipped back into that same dark place.
I think this has been going on now for like 2 years. I think that I've been slowly devolving into the most mean-spirited, rude, like nasty, like just callous, psychopathic version of myself. I think that I've been devolving into this. And a lot of my friends have told me this. My dad has told me this. He said, you've got to chill out. You've got to calm down. I've been like, oh, that old man doesn't know what he's talking about. And I've finally had some level of accountability for that. And thank God. I look back at some of the things that I've said and done over the past 2 years, and I don't think that I've been wrong about everything, obviously, right? But there have been ways that I've communicated and ways that I've acted that are indefensible. And I think looking back on it, it's just disgusting. And it's something that when you get lost in the sauce and you get fixated around